And if I had to be another person to stand up, if I think, after really going through this, and looking at the files and looking at the case, if I really feel that Karen Reed didn't do this and I have to be a voice that stands up and helps, I will.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
We're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Now, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
I'm going to tell you one thing. Karen Reed's not going to fold. Karen Reed's not going to give up. Defense team's not going to quit. The Free Karen Reed movement is going to continue. We will continue to raise funds for her. We will continue to do standouts across Massachusetts, across the nation, across the world to let everybody know what's going on here in the state of Massachusetts, the corruption. And we will continue to get the word out there, believe me. All right, here we go, everybody. Welcome back in to Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media Channel. I am your host, Brian, and tonight is Friday Night Heat. I want to thank everybody come in, and we got some heat today in the courtroom. We got some heat in the Karen Reed retrial courtroom. It was a battle in there today, absolute battle. And it's like you're sitting there and you're watching ARCCA, real scientists that did real experiments, and then you compare it to Judd Welcher's finger paint exercise. I mean, if you're sitting there as a jury, what experiments are you going to believe? What experiments are you going to believe? Let me go through some of my notes today here, and then we're going to obviously go through testimony. The portion of testimony that I want to go through this evening is, obviously, I want to go over the experimentation from ARCCA. So we're going to go over that, and then I'm going to skip ahead and go to some of the cross from Hank Brennan. But again, I want to welcome everybody in. Make sure to smash the like button when you come in. I hope we have one hell of a show this evening. So I told you that ARCCA this time around was going to become prepared, and prepared they were. We saw three different experimentation of the taillight at certain speeds, and what the result of that was at hitting the test dummy's arm. Pretty incredible stuff. I actually really enjoy. It's like, what did they say in Breaking Bad? Science, yo. It's science, yo. Fuck yeah. It's science. So we saw some science today, which was really cool. It's good to see that. You know, and I thought about this. With the McAlberts underestimated is the power of science and data. And we saw that today. I thought ARCCA completely knocked it out of the park. And I knew Hank Brennan. I'm going to tell you one thing that I was feeling. I knew Hank Brennan was going to pick apart where they had the taillight and the suspended arm. And I knew he was going to come at them and say, well, why didn't you use a crash dummy? Why are you only suspending the arm? And we did hear about that. And I knew he was going to come at ARCCA about that. But, you know, again, Dr. Wolf was prepared. He had the answers to Hank Brennan. It was a major battle during cross. And we're going to get a little bit more of that. As we saw, they wrapped up early today because, hey, it's 3:45, Mr. Jackson, and one of the jurors has to go. And granted, they probably did, but you know, Bev, she can slip out for beverage time for 4 p.m. Let's get out of here. You know, no full days in court. We got to go. So again, ARCCA being prepared. I like the fact that Alan Jackson when they came back from the morning recess, addressed one of the major issues that I thought Hank Brennan was going to hit on. And I had this feeling that Hank Brennan was going to come in and try to attack them about payment. Well, what do we hear today? $400,000 from the Commonwealth, $50,000 for ARCCA. And I like the fact that Alan Jackson brought up the ARCCA payments right after the break to neutralize Hank's angle. He said, basically they're just paid defense. He was trying to make up this narrative that ARCCA was basically defense paid experts. And we know that's not the truth. That was sought out from the FBI, the agency that was sought out by the FBI to do an independent study. I thought the testimony today was absolutely damning to the Commonwealth. Hank Brennan had nothing in that fight. And he went to a low blow. Tried to bring in Dr. Wolf's wife, asking about, oh, well, does she favor one side or the other? And he's like, I don't know what my wife even cares, But again, tried to scare him with a tactic, but had no evidence to any of that. It was literally a low blow move. We had another desperation move. Hank bringing in the junk terms like hard as a rock to fill holes in the story. And when he talked about, well, did you take in the factor that the ground was hard and it was frozen that night and it was hard as a rock? And we heard that with the meteorologists who are going to come in and testify that the ground, the beautiful scientific term of hard as a rock. We heard some of that today, and Hank trying to slide that in as well. Then we had this very strange narrative in the middle of it. It almost was sounding like the Commonwealth was trying to change their theory of how the holes ended up in John O'Keefe's sweatshirt. And of course, we know it's from Chloe, the dog bites, but tried to change this narrative after the heart of the rock narrative. Well, yeah, if John's body was hit, he would have slid across the ground, and that would have caused tearing in his clothes. So now their narrative is changing again. And then I love Alan Jackson again today, comes back on rebuttal and talks about the arm, the arm, and I'm slipping here. I'm trying to read my notes. Bear with me. We're not perfect, people. And gets in at the end with some great going back to that arm, that test dummy arm. So again, a lot of nitpicking inside of this testimony from Hank Brennan today. We had, Bev sustaining objections over and over and over again, would not let in the FBI, would not let in any conversation about the FBI, would not let in a lot of testimony today. So, again, we're seeing what's happening here, shaping it all out for the Commonwealth. And but again, it was a pretty intense day in court. But Wolf didn't sweat. I mean, he kept his cool through the entire thing. There was points where Hank Brennan could not get what he wanted Wolf to say, and Wolf was not going to back down. He was going to hold his ground in this, and he's not going to lie. He's just going to get out there and tell it like it is. He's the scientist here. He's the scientist. You're not going to challenge this guy. He's too smart for you, Hank. And the tactics, the low blow tactics that Hank Brennan brought in today, he thought this was going to rock the world of Dr. Wolf, and he's just too smart for it. And he was going to be ready, and he was ready for it. And I love the fact that he held his ground, and I think he battled really well with Hank. So that's my opening here. I want to get into, obviously, some testimony. We'll play back the experiments today. We'll talk about that, or tonight. We'll talk about that, and then I'm going to play a little bit of the cross-examination from Hank Brennan. But let me get to this first super chat, and please do me a favor, smash that like button if you just came in the room. I appreciate it. Josh H with $5 says, as of today, Brennan has me asking what caused the holes in John's hoodie, the tail light, bushes, or road rash on the glass. He has the burden of proof. It's a good point, but we know it's the dog bites. We know it's the dog bites. I mean, we literally watched the experimentation today. And I made, and I want to get to it in the video. I want to pause it and talk about this. The experiment at 30 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, when they have the freeze frame and you actually see where the arm damages the taillight, and it's nothing like it looked in the Sally port. And I do believe if you did that experiment over and over and over again, just like Dr. Wolf said, you are going to end up with pretty damn similar result. It may vary a little bit, but it's going to be pretty damn close. All right, let's get into some testimony. We'll go to direct first, and we're going to watch and learn about the experimentation. I told you they were going to bring videos. They were going to bring chalks. They were ready, and I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, here we go. Let's do some testimony here. Appreciate everybody being here for
DDV for identification.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, do you see what's displayed or presented up on the TV screen?
Yes.
All right. Do you have with you, by the way, just a matter of housekeeping, something called a spotlight?
Yes.
Something that can do whatever spotlight that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I may ask you to employ that, or I may take it from you at some point as we're discussing this. Do you recognize what's on the screen?
Oh, by the way, I think my dad's watching. Hi, Dad. Everybody say hi to Papa LTL. I think he's watching. We were texting just before the show. He said he'd be on the sideline tonight. So everybody say hi to Papa LTL. He's watching tonight. Oh, by the way, my weight loss journey. I'll give you some updates here. I'm officially down 11 pounds. I feel amazing. I'm definitely starting to see the weight loss. I got about another 10 pounds that I want to lose, and I'll be right back where I want to be at the LTL weight. So I'm feeling great. I took my blood pressure the other day. It was 117/72. That's the best blood pressure I've had in 5 years. I told you the other day in my post that I said I have been feeling an absolute complete feeling of calmness lately, and I haven't felt that in a very long time. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good here. All right, let's get the testimony.
This is my PowerPoint with just the first page, the title.
If we can move to the next slide, please. Describe what we're looking at in this slide.
So good to be
This
here.
is from Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation, slide 121, in which he's indicating that there are lacerations on John O'Keefe's right arm and forearm. And he's indicated in this slide that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX 570.
In coming to your opinions and conclusions, and I know this is a mouthful, did you consider the opinions and conclusions of Dr. Welcher in conducting your analysis and your ultimate testing?
Yes.
Did you rely on Dr. Welcher's report and his PowerPoint in reaching your conclusions and opinions ultimately in this case?
I don't know that I relied on it. Certainly, I utilized them to have an understanding of what his basis was for his opinion and what his opinion was. Ultimately, at ARCCA, we did our own independent testing to evaluate that.
So just to be clear, I'm not asking Dr. Wolf if you agreed with his opinions and conclusions. I'm simply asking, did you rely on those in order to come to your opinions and conclusions? Did you incorporate them?
Sustained is too.
Did you agree ultimately with Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Sustained.
You certainly were aware of what his opinions and conclusions were, correct?
Before Mr. Jackson on that one.
Were you aware of Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
Are some of those opinions and conclusions represented in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
Are some of them represented on this slide in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
So ridiculous that Jackson had to do it that way. So ridiculous, like baby steps. Baby steps. Ridiculous. All right, here we go.
You indicated that this slide indicates that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arms are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight, correct?
Correct.
Are the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm lacerations?
That would be an opinion from my colleague, Dr. Retrial.
Have you ever heard the phrase abrasion?
Yes.
In your opinion, are the injuries to John O'Keefe's right arm better described as lacerations or abrasions?
I don't have an opinion on that.
Okay. Slide number 2, please. Based on your review of Dr. Welcher's reports and his data, what testing did Dr. Welcher undertake or conduct?
So he did, initially, it appeared that he did a static test, if you will, just demonstrating holding his right arm out adjacent to the rear taillights on the right side of an exemplar Lexus to demonstrate his theory of how the arm contacted the taillight.
What is a static test?
So I'm sustaining that. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson. And I'm going to strike that.
What testing did you note that Dr. Welcher did with regard to this particular photograph? What is a static test?
Well, in a static test, that neither the arm or the vehicle is moving. It's just he's aligning his right arm adjacent to show how his arm aligns to the geometry and the dimensions of the Lexus.
Did Dr. Welcher appear to be wearing similar clothing as John O'Keefe was wearing on January 29, 2022?
Yes.
Was there any significance or purpose for that, in your opinion?
In this test, no.
Did you identify any limitations with regard to this sort of testing undertaken by Dr. Welcher?
Well, it's very basic in that the only thing that this demonstrates is that you can get your right arm to align with the taillight. Beyond that, it doesn't tell you anything with respect to what happens to the arm when it makes contact with the taillight, right? What's the motion of the arm? What's the damage to the taillight? What's the acceleration of the arm? What's the forces of the arm? So it doesn't answer any of those other questions. The only question it answers is, does the arm align with the taillight?
Captain Skidmark checking in $5 says, I wish they emphasized more on where the test debris landed. And I'm sure they didn't all fly to the right side of the road, which would mean only one thing. Yeah, that was a good point and a good observation as well. I wish they would have dug into that a little bit more. I also think there's still a major opportunity here that we haven't heard about, and I'm probably guessing we're not going to hear about, is why this taillight, the photo of the taillight after it's removed, is so clean, and Karen Reed's SUV is so salty and dirty with debris over it. I still think there is a huge opportunity there. Again, Robert Alessi touched on it a couple of testimonies ago, but didn't really dig into it. And I think that is an absolute point that they could bring out. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to get it in there. They probably won't, but I've been calling this out for a while. All right, here we go.
You're aware that John O'Keefe was 6'1", correct?
Correct.
Is the only person, let me ask it a different way. Can only a 6'1" person align their arm with the taillight?
No, the arm is adjustable, so certainly people of different heights could also meet that alignment as well.
Just by pivoting your arm a little bit, right?
Sustain.
How would you describe the ability of somebody 5'7", 6'3", being able to align their arm with the taillight?
Just changing the orientation and the posture of your arm.
Was there any scientific significance, in your opinion, of this particular test?
Again, other than just demonstrating that it aligns with it, no, nothing beyond that.
Next slide, please.
Crushing blow.
What are we looking at here?
So this is an extracted frame from one of his dynamic tests in which the vehicle is moving at about 2 miles per hour into his arm, making contact with his.
I mean, like, what are you thinking as a jury? All right, you're sitting here, you're kind of watching this replay, and then all of a sudden you're going to get real experiments. You must have been like, oh my God, like this is like real scientific experiment. And I don't care. And this is my point in all of this too. I don't care how much Hank Brennan tried to disparage Dr. Wolf today, his credibility and everything in between of that. If I'm a juror and I've already seen the experiments, that's not erased from my mind. I don't give a shit about 9 pounds or 11 pounds or 10 pounds or 8 pounds. I'm saying this as if I didn't know anything about this trial and I was sitting on that jury. I wouldn't give a shit because I'm going to go, wait a minute. That guy did a finger painting exercise. These guys went the extra length. And they're showing me actual true recreation visuals in video that would make me think, that would get my brain thinking. I don't care if you're trying to bring what a low blow. Bring my wife into, he's like, my wife? Like, what are you talking about? My wife? and just tried to discredit his credentials, and then just kept going on mass and talking about mass. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist. I'm not going to try to answer to this. But what my fucking eyes see in front of me, that video, those recreations, and the photos that they took, that ARCCA used, that's not going away. That's got me thinking, like, all right, wait a minute here. All right, let's keep going here. I'm going to actually put
his forearm and his elbow
in the chat.
What is a dynamic test as it relates to a static test?
So that's when something's in motion, and in this instance, it's the Lexus moving at about 2 miles per hour into his arm.
Did Dr. Welcher explain what the purpose of this test was?
From what I recall, I think it was to demonstrate that when his arm makes contact with the taillight, he observed paint transfer in the general location that there were the abrasions or the lacerations on his arm.
Did he appear to paint the taillight?
He did, yes.
Do you see that Dr. Welcher appears to be wearing an orange T-shirt? Yeah.
Sustained.
What is he wearing?
Appears to be an orange T-shirt.
Is that similar to...
All right, poll at the top, and I'm asking the question, what experiments, in your opinion, are more credible? Okay, and actually, I put a poll out on X today. Let's look at that really quick and see the results. Results on that one, which is actually still running, I believe. But let me see what the results was on that. Whose experiments do you think were more scientifically correct? That's actually probably a better. There was 1,546 votes. There's 16 hours left in it. 99.1% said ARCCA. Only 0.09% said Dr. Welcher. And here's something that's even more crazier. As the ARCCA testimony, when they're showing the experiments on X, not guilty was trending on X. And I went and clicked on a lot of those threads, and it was all Karen Reed related. Not guilty was trending on X today. It was just incredible. Here we go.
To what was described as John O'Keefe having worn that night on January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Is there any significance to wearing that T-shirt?
Not that I can think of, no.
Did you note any or identify any shortcomings with this particular test?
Well, much like the static test, again, it leaves the door open to all those questions, right? About, again, doing this at 2 miles an hour doesn't tell you anything about, well, what happens at 10, what happens at 15, what happens at 20, right? In terms of what are the collision forces, what's the damage, how does the arm move, what would the expected injuries be, right? This dynamic test, as well as the static test, doesn't answer any of those questions for us.
Then Hank Brennan tried to discredit the air cannon that was made. Potato. They made a potato cannon. He's like, it's an air cannon. Potato cannon. It's like, no, it's an air cannon. Tried to discredit it. Oh, you're potato cannon. Potato. He says fucking potato. Come on, Hank. It's potato. It's potato. Get it right. Here we go.
Is this test from Dr. Welcher considered a force calculation?
I'm not aware of him making any type of force calculations or measuring accelerations or anything of that nature, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine whether the damage to Ms. Reed's Lexus was consistent with the striking of an arm of a pedestrian?
I'm not aware of any impact testing that he did, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine the forces necessary to cause the damage to the taillight of Ms. Reed's vehicle?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine the forces necessary to cause the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinions as it relates to the speed of the subject Lexus at the time of the alleged incident?
No, from reviewing his report and his PowerPoint and analysis, I could not find anywhere in it a specified speed or even a range of speeds.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinion as it relates to the forces experienced by the taillight in such an impact?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinion at all as it relates to the post-impact trajectory or movement, if you will, of John O'Keefe's mass or his body subsequent to the alleged conduct?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Next slide, please. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
What is this?
So this is something that you probably have heard and certainly I've discussed already, but this is looking at the right rear corner of the subject Lexus, specifically in the area of the damaged right taillight.
Did you consider this photograph in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
What, if anything, of significance did you note about this?
I mean, you can see it right there. If I could zoom in on this, you can see all the dirt and debris on Karen Reed's SUV. You can see it. Okay. And then when the taillight is removed and they have that close up, and actually, this is a good point right here. It's a good stoppage right here. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you something right now. And I put this out on X today. I put it on my Facebook page. Let's pause here for a second. I'm going to show you right now because I took a screenshot. This is a great point to stop, and we're going to stop it again at. Okay. So let's do this. Let me share my screen. So you see how that taillight looks right now? That's how the taillight looks right now. Okay. Here's ARCCA's experiment at 30 miles an hour. Does that taillight look like the taillight that's inside the Sally port? 29 miles an hour. I'm sorry. Does that look like anything like that taillight inside the Sally port? Need I say more? We can just end the live right now. We can literally end the live stream right now. It's over. Does that look anything like it? That whole lens is intact, and it's that upper part where the arm blew through because it was positioned over here. If I share my screen again, we go back to testimony. There's Karen Reed's SUV inside the Sally port. It's not even close. All right, here we go.
Say, like, other than the fact that it's damaged.
Well, I'm going to jump to the next slide, if you will. So this is so now the taillight obviously has been removed from the vehicle. So obviously what's important here is looking at what is the damage that we have to this taillight. What components were damaged in this alleged interaction. So we're looking at the clear diffuser at the bottom is fractured and missing. Same with the ones on the vertical side. The majority of the outer red lens is also missing and fractured. And then on the back side, we also have some damage in terms of some fracturing to that black plastic. And there's also a chunk of plastic missing on the top portion of the taillight as well.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about that diffuser. If you could focus your attention on this area. Describe for the jurors what they're looking at.
How clean that taillight looks. Look how clean that taillight looks. It would not be like that. It would not be like that. God, I hope the jury is seeing this. I hope they're seeing this bullshit because today was powerful testimony. The visuals that we got to see today.
What is the diffuser?
Right, let me see if this. So the diffusers, right where my mouse is, there's a clear diffuser that runs along the bottom, and then there's another diffuser that runs along here, and then it also goes up vertically. Same here on the bottom one, that also goes up vertically. So this piece was missing and fractured on the bottom, along with the vertical portion. The chrome piece here you can see is also fractured and damaged, and then the kind of the second tier, if you will, that clear diffuser was also fractured and broken on the upper section as well.
Was that of significance to you?
It would have been nice if he said, and by the way, we didn't see any dirt or debris on this. Wouldn't that be great if he said that? And by the way, if this was exposed to those elements and this taillight shattered like they said they did, then this would have dirt and debris inside of it. And obviously, we don't see that here. God, that would have been great to slide that in there.
Your review of the damage to the taillight.
Yes.
Why?
Well, because that tells me that we have to have enough force and energy to break, we talked about earlier that 5 millimeter thick red outer lens. We have to have enough force to be able to get beyond that, to now start penetrating into the interior components of the taillight to get to, again, those clear diffusers and certainly cause damage to get induced out the back end of the taillight as well.
May I have just a moment?
Yes.
I mean, even that looks
Wilson,
clean.
did you bring with you an undamaged taillight exemplar?
Yes. It's up here with me.
It's up there. Oh, I was just looking for it.
Yep.
Thanks for nothing. Describe what it is that you brought with you.
So I brought a two-part assembly. So what I did is I 3D printed a bracket so that I could mount the lift gate taillight assembly as well as the quarter panel taillight assembly.
And these are undamaged in sort of manufacturing specs, correct?
Correct, yes.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Okay.
It's a good observation. I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I was listening to it at work, and maybe about 35 minutes into 40 minutes in, I was checked out. I was annoyed. I was annoyed. I was like, can this just be over now? This is so stupid. All right, here we go. Back to testimony. Let's just speed up here a little bit.
Do you recognize what that is?
Yes.
Is that what you just described?
Correct. Yes.
Describe it one more time for the court and the jury. What is it that we're looking at right here?
So this is an exemplar set of taillights from a 2021 Lexus LX 570. On my left side here, this is the liftgate taillight assembly, and it's attached to the quarter panel taillight assembly. And I will know it's not normally like that. Obviously, you can't have a connector, else you wouldn't be able to open the liftgate. But I've printed a bracket back here so that these can remain as one unit.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to have that marked as next in order.
Is that coming into evidence?
Yes, if possible.
And that's awesome too, because now the jury is going to be able to look at that piece of evidence. If they want that taillight in that jury room and they want to feel it, this is fucking great. This is brilliant by Jackson. This is brilliant by the Reed team, because they're going to be able to feel that taillight, and they're going to be able to feel the weight of that taillight, and they're going to be able to feel the thickness of the plastic of that taillight, that poly resin taillight. They're going to be able to feel this and hold it and look at it inside that jury room and examine it all the way. And I love this. Bring it into evidence. Let them be able to look at this taillight assembly. I love it, because they're going to have the broken one that they can look at, and now they can compare it to this. And I love that. Absolutely love it. All right, got a $10 super chat. Love animals. Thank you so much. Say, hey, Brian, haven't heard anything about Judd lying when he gave testimony in an insurance scandal hearing. Brandy went into detail in the 13th juror, 55 at 43-55. Keep up fighting the worthy fight. Free Karen Reed, free Turtle Boy. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Haven't had a chance to listen to it or watch it. So, but I thank you for, letting the audience know about it. All right, let's keep going back to testimony here.
Okay. So how?
May I approach?
Yes.
This might be clunky. Thank you. If you just have the tag, perhaps put somewhere on the maybe the liftgate side.
And is Dr. Wolf going to use it for his testimony now?
Yes.
Okay,
Very
so
briefly.
give it back over there, please, Chrissy. Just give it to him. Thank you.
Yeah, Walter brought in a hat. We brought a taillight assembly. But I love this. This is a great play by the defense. Give them the taillight. Let the jury hold this thing. Let the jury feel what the thickness of that plastic and what the force would feel like, to just get a sense of how hard it would be to break that. I think it's great. I think this is a great move by the defense. All right, here we go.
There's a 5mm area of acrylic covering.
Right, Philip.
Correct.
What I'm knocking on, is that the 5mm acrylic?
Yes, both on the quarter panel part that you just pointed to, as well as the liftgate part.
Mr. Jackson, why don't we give that back to the witness and let him do it instead of you?
Sure. Is there, can you see through that loose material into the diffuser that you've just been describing?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, in this area here, there's a diffuser that's running along the bottom.
So, Dr. Wolf, I'm going to ask you to not have that so close to the court reporters.
My apologies.
Use the other side.
I get a memo here from Lisa. Lisa, $5. Thank you. She says, why does everyone think Wolf's testimony helps prosecutors more? I wasn't getting that sentiment today. I wasn't getting that feeling. The polls that I looked at, the polls that I put out there, everybody felt that Dr. Wolf and ARCCA's testimony was great and very beneficial for the defense. I think the fact of people are upset is because the taillight broke. Well, it would essentially break at 29 miles an hour. They've proved that, okay? But it did not break in the pattern of what it looked like inside the Sally port. And it would also prove that, and they proved that there would be injuries beyond the scope of what John had. So, this is, I think it's still very beneficial for the defense. I really do. And I love the fact, again, going back to this taillight, put this taillight in the jurors' hands. let them feel this polycarbonate taillight, and then they can start making the decision. You know, does it line up with the Commonwealth's theory? All right, here we go. Back to testimony.
Yes, Your
Thanks for
Honor.
the 5, by the way.
So along the bottom is the clear diffuser that runs along and then goes up vertically. And then on the second tier, there's also a clear diffuser that runs along here and then goes up vertically. And you might be able to see it through, it kind of looks like there's little dots on it. So that's what I'm referring to in terms of the diffuser that's underneath. And that, again, so you have that outer material that's 5 millimeters roughly in thickness.
And that's the thing here too. And this is a great point by Josie. If that arm, like we saw in this experiment, was there holding the drinking glass, or however the arm was articulated, what the Commonwealth is theorizing here, that's the bigger point in this. The diffuser, that left side of the taillight, the long part, that broke, but it did not break on Karen Reed's vehicle. It was just the taillight. And this goes back to my opening statement. This is what the Commonwealth and the McAlberts and all the police officers involved in this cover-up, they did not take in account of science and data. And once this thing was recreated, we saw what happened. It did not line up with the damage on Karen Reed's SUV. It was completely different. And again, I do believe, and I'm not a scientist, okay? But I think that if you would have done this 10 times in a row, with brand new taillights in the same fashion, you would get very similar results. That the diffuser would have smashed like it did. And then that upper portion would have cracked. And obviously, it just looks completely different what it looked like inside the Sally port. All right, let's go back to testimony. But great.
And then those diffusers are about 3 millimeters in thickness underneath this.
100%.
Could you make a determination, and you can go ahead and have a seat. Well, actually, you may not want to. Could you make a determination of the space, the gap between the outer plasticine area, the outer acrylic area, and the internal diffusers? You could just estimate that gap?
If I had to estimate, I'd probably estimate around 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches.
Okay. You indicated that something was of significance to you in this photograph about the diffusers on the subject taillight, correct?
Correct.
Describe, now that you're holding that, what was it that was of note to you, Dr. Wolf?
So as I mentioned, we have damage not only to this outer thick portion, but it was enough force and energy to then penetrate deep enough to fracture the underlying diffusers that sit below this outer surface, and certainly enough force then to work its way back through inducement into the backside, and ultimately there was a top portion of the taillight that was also fractured up here.
Was all that significant to you in your review of the subject taillight material?
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead and put that away.
All right, so that can't go back there because it's in evidence. So why don't you take it and...
I was just going to...
And I do realize I just made a mistake. I'm talking about that outer lens. The long outer lens, that was the part that smashed in the experiment. I kept calling that diffuser. Why did I call that diffuser? Didn't you call that diffuser at the beginning of this? And I screwed that up. But what I'm talking about is that long outer lens. That is the part that smashed. And you just had that top portion of the actual taillight that that blew out in their experiment. If you go back to the Sally port, that long piece on Karen Reed's SUV, that photo, that is perfectly intact. It was just the taillight that was all smashed out. Sorry, I got tongue twisted in that, but that was my overall point, is that when they did that experiment, and if they did this over and over again, I would say, you know, just give it 10 times, you would get, in my opinion, the same result as ARCCA got over and over again. All right, here's
there until he's finished with his testimony, and then we can give it to the clerk magistrate. However you want to do it, Your Honor. I have no preference.
Is he using it still for his testimony?
Not right now.
All right, so thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
May I continue?
Yes.
Can we go to the next slide? What are we looking at here?
This is a collection of photographs that depict various fragments from the right rear tail lamp assembly of the Lexus. And I will note that, I'll try to spotlight it. There are a few fragments in this photograph that are glass fragments, which, as I discussed earlier, there's no glass in the taillight, so these did not originate from the assembly. But altogether, from what I recall, there's about 50 fragments, I believe, that were counted or so, maybe a little less than that from the right taillight.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So these are photographs depicting the sweatshirt or hoodie that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing on the night of the alleged incident.
And what was the role that this played in your analysis ultimately?
Well, so one of the things that I noted, and I can go to the next slide, is there were a series of small punctures or holes in the sleeve, on the right sleeve of the sweatshirt in varying sizes. I think some as small as just a few millimeters. Again, I think there was maybe 10 or 12, I think I recall, on the right sleeve of that sweatshirt.
If we could go back to the larger photo, the previous slide, do you see the right sleeve denoted on the photograph to the right?
Yes.
Your review of these photographs, what was the significance of the triangular sort of arrows or markers?
I believe those were to annotate or draw attention to those holes.
Okay, the defects in the right sleeve?
It's
Correct.
Can you count those for us, please?
It's where the teeth were from the dog.
On the photograph on the right, I believe I see a total of 9.
And what about the photograph on the left, just the right sleeve area?
9 as well.
If we can go to the next slide. What are the arrows pointing to in these photographs?
Puncture wounds
So
from the
this
dog
is
bites.
basically the previous shot, but what appears to be close-ups of some of those evidence markers.
You indicated some of the sizes. What were some of the smaller sizes of those defects or holes?
From what I recall, like I said, I think it was around 3 to 5 millimeters, maybe some of the smaller ones.
How big is 3 millimeters in inches?
It'd be probably around like an eighth of an inch or so.
Can we go to the next slide, please?
Oh, Barry, thank you.
What are you describing when you say the word fundamental, or do you write the word fundamentals?
So I want to discuss some very basic concepts that I hope will kind of resonate as we go through the PowerPoint, so that you have an understanding of the underlying physics and what I'm talking about.
Can you go ahead and describe the role of an accident reconstructionist and the fundamentals that an accident reconstructionist undertakes when performing the kind of testing that you performed?
So, as I mentioned earlier, when I was describing what a simple definition of accident reconstruction is, it's the application of physics and engineering to collision events. So I want to go through some very basic elements of that so that you have an understanding of the physics.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at here?
So this might be something you all remember back from high school physics, but even though it's been around since the late...
I love it. He's just dumbing down the Commonwealth and Judd Welcher's experimentation. I want to get up to actually watching the physical videos. So we're going to skip through the explanations here, and I want to get to the physical videos. All right, let's go right here. Let's go right here.
I think hypothesis.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Let's describe, if you would, please, what role hypothesis plays in the general scientific method.
So generally, it's like I said, it's an if-then statement. So if you make a statement, if the arm contacts the taillight, then the taillight will shatter, right? So you want to do tests and experimentation and analyze that data to see whether you can accept or reject that hypothesis.
And what's the next stage?
So as I mentioned, after a hypothesis, it's once you've determined that, what your hypothesis is, you want to test with experimentation, analyze that data, and that certainly may be an iterative process that you do multiple times to then be able to draw a conclusion from that analysis and testing.
What's the next stage?
To basically report those conclusions and findings.
Why is it important to report those conclusions and findings?
Well, I think so that you can, whether you can accept or reject the hypothesis that was put forward earlier.
Do you have to analyze the data following the testing that you undertake?
Yes, like I mentioned, I think it's an iterative process, because certainly you could do one test and it may not be clear what the answer is at that point, so you may have to do additional tests to basically parametrically evaluate your hypothesis.
Did you see this well, let me ask you first, did you undertake this scientific method with regard to your reconstruction or your testing in this case?
Yes.
Did you observe this same scenario in Dr. Welcher's report?
Sustained as to that one, Mr. Jackson.
Did you see this undertaken anywhere else?
Sustained there.
Welcher.
Did you look for testing in Dr. Welcher's evaluation, all of his data?
Yes.
Did you find any?
No.
Other than the static blue paint test?
That was the only test, correct.
Did you see any force dynamics testing?
That's leading, so you can
Sure.
get to it without a problem.
What about any other testing? Anything else that we've talked about? Do you see anything else done in Dr. Welcher's
As it
report?
pertains to an analysis to the taillight and the damage in the forces, no.
Let's move on to the next slide. Did you actually undertake testing in furtherance of the scientific method?
Yes.
Let's move on to the next slide and you can describe what we're talking about. What are we looking at here?
So you're looking at a test matrix
Uh-oh.
of the various tests that we conducted at ARCCA. I could go through them one by one if you want.
Let me ask you foundationally, was your testing directed toward determining whether or not the scenario proposed in Dr. Welcher's report was consistent or inconsistent with what you would find ultimately?
The objection sustained.
Was your testing specifically designed to determine whether the damage to Ms. Reed's vehicle, her Lexus, was consistent with the scenario that was proposed by Dr. Welcher?
That's sustained too. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
What was
Nothing wrong
your
with
testing?
testing.
What were you engaged in terms of your testing? What were you trying to find out?
Well, I think it was to, again, we talked about earlier about that hypothesis, right? My understanding, Dr. Welcher indicated that the arm contacted the taillight, but there was no analysis or testing to determine what's the expected outcome of that. What's the damage to the taillight?
Adam Tepper jumping in saying they'll rest either Monday or Tuesday. I put a prediction out there. I thought that it was going to be just barring today, the shorter court day. Looks like Jackson has a little bit more on Monday. You're going to have Rentschler come in. And I'm going to tell you right now, everybody's waiting for Garrett Wing. Everybody's going to wait. Who else did they have on there? A couple other people, but Garrett Wing is the one that stepped. I'm going to tell you, they're not going to call him. I don't think they're going to call him at all. Why end on that? End on your strongest witnesses. And I said that today in a post. So I'm thinking, and I'm gonna agree here with Adam. It's gonna be probably, I'm thinking Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon, they're gonna rest. Or actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I said Monday afternoon, and Tuesday will be closing arguments. And then this will go to a jury. That's my prediction. But why bring in Garrett Wing and go back through all the dog bite? We got the dog bite analysis from Dr. Russell. They feel like that is strong. That was a strong enough witness to sit with that. You bring in Garrett Wing, I think it's just going to open up a whole other can of worms that the defense is going to have to go through again, that they just want to move on. If you notice this trial from trial 1, the biggest thing that everybody is focused on, the Commonwealth and the defense, is proving and disproving the accident. That's it. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I said this when I saw Karen the other day, and they started to get into the accident reconstruction and talking about this. Judd Welcher, I would think it was on the day with Judd Welcher, I said to her, this is the Commonwealth's case. And when ARCCA comes up, that's going to be your case. Not discounting anything before that. This is where reasonable doubt is going to, this is where the reasonable doubt is going to be debated between these two experts, Welcher and ARCCA. That's going to be the battle in this. And I've been saying this all along. Not that any of the other stuff is not important. It is. But this is the core of the case right here. Proving the accident. Did the accident happen? Did Karen actually hit John O'Keefe? This is it. So that's how I feel in this. And again, I could be crazy. I could be wrong. I'm going to talk about it on Monday night when I have Nan Gallagher back up here, Todd McGee, and we're gonna talk about that. So, all right, let's keep going here.
So you answered the first question. I'm striking that second part. Ask another question.
Was there anything else?
I think simply put, it's to find out what happens when you impact an arm with a Lexus taillight at various.
And the thing is, anyone seen Bev's grave concern? Rumor was Green was at the courthouse today, but I'm not sure. Again, they could just have some witnesses. You never know. And I'm not illegal. I'm not illegal. I am not a lawyer, but I just watch and see things. Sometimes they put people on a witness list just to maybe scare the other side. And the Commonwealth could do that too, to scare the defense. You could have a witness show up and be in waiting, and the Commonwealth might not be completely prepared for that defense witness, and then they have to scuttlebutt. I literally just said scuttlebutt around the courthouse. So it's a chess game. It's not checkers. Lawyering in trials is definitely chess. I want to go back up to this one too. M says, I 100% agree when people are saying it was a mistake not to bring in Proctor Higgins, Albert, but I think the strategy is that it's not a car accident. Exactly. I think that is the point of this case. Proving and disproving the crash, the accident. I'm going to tell you, and Vero doesn't agree with me. So I disagree. I think Garrett Wing is valuable. No brainer testimony. I just don't think it's going to have the major impact where this is the Commonwealth's case. Think about it. They have to prove the accident. The burden of proof is not on the defense. They're just there to defend it. The burden of proof, because what ultimately the Commonwealth is saying that ultimately killed John O'Keefe is the accident. That's what this case is about. It's about an accident. I understand all those other things. I understand it. That, in my opinion, is what happened at 34 Fairview. But the jury just has to see scientific experimentation and data to prove that this was not an accident. Put the reasonable doubt inside that jury's minds, and this case is over. Case is absolutely over. And I know, listen, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me. I get it. We know what happened at 34 Fairview, but I'm telling you, this is the case, the accident. All right, here we go.
Speeds. What happens?
What was your understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained.
Did you have an understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained too.
Ultimately, what were you trying to find out through your testing?
As I mentioned, I think it was determined when you impact a taillight at 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, what happens to the taillight? What's the expected damage? What happens to a sweatshirt when it makes contact with that? What happens to the fragments? How does the arm move? What's the acceleration of the arm? What's the change in speed of the arm? And certainly, as I mentioned, my colleague, Dr. Rentschler, will discuss what are the expected injuries in that type of impact.
Did you see any of those questions answered in Dr. Welcher's report?
Ask it differently.
What did you...
Lisa with a $1 Venmo. Thank you so much. She says that's because Welcher didn't write his report. Someone wrote it for him. Laugh out loud. Thank you for the Venmo. Let's see. Adam says, I agree with you, Brian. The accident is the lesser charge. If you can disprove the accident, then Karen is not guilty on all three charges. The focus has to be that there is no collision. And Adam's a lawyer, and that's coming from one of our lawyer friends here that watch LTL. And actually, Adam's going to join us on Monday night. So we're going to have a 4-panel party. That sounded pretty cool. A 4-panel party on Monday night. Adam's going to jump up. So 2 lawyers, of course, is always better than 1, right? And I'd love to hear, you're going to love to hear his opinion on all of this too. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about this. I'm sure we will on Monday night. So, and yeah, and Jennifer said, did Welcher actually even have a hypothesis? I don't think he did. I don't think he did. All right, here we go. Let's go back.
In terms of Dr. Welcher's report as it relates to those types of questions.
That's sustained.
Ultimately, did you undertake a methodology to perform the testing to answer the questions that you just explained needed to be answered for this jury?
Yes.
Describe that, please.
So we started out, we kind of worked at this incrementally, right? We didn't start right off the bat with utilizing an exemplar Lexus going right into an ATD or a test dummy, right? We wanted to start in the laboratory to have an understanding what happens at a range of speeds, in this instance, in our first 2 tests, between 10 and 17 miles per hour, right? What happens, what kind of damage do we observe, right? At 10 miles an hour, do we even brake the light? At 17, what kind of damage do we get? What kind of accelerations do we get? And then we moved up to full-scale vehicle impact testing.
Is that methodology that you just described generally accepted in the field of accident reconstruction, in the broader field of engineering?
Absolutely. Everything from utilizing an instrumented test dummy to using an exemplar vehicle, to all the data acquisition systems that we had in the laboratory, as well as the vehicle. All of that is generally accepted techniques in the field of accident reconstruction to evaluate what we did in this case.
And are those techniques also supported by peer-reviewed articles in scientific literature related to accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Did you rely on this methodology that you just described to render opinions and conclusions as it relates to this case?
Yes.
Have you relied on that same methodology in rendering opinions and conclusions in other courts?
Yes.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So we've gone over this before, but this is looking at the exemplar vehicle that we utilize for the latter part of our testing. You're looking at the, again, just annotating where the liftgate taillight is, as well as the quarter panel taillight. When
you say exemplar vehicle, what is this SUV that we're looking at?
So it's the same year, make, and model of the subject vehicle. So it's a 2021 Lexus LX 570. So it's the same weight, same geometry, same as the subject vehicle.
Is this a picture off the internet, or do you actually have access to this truck?
We have access to that vehicle, yes.
And ultimately, what testing did you undertake specifically as it relates to this particular vehicle?
We did full-scale vehicle testing with the vehicle driving into an ATD arm, as well as an ATD arm attached to a dummy, and then a full-on impact to a test dummy.
Did you assess the damage to the right tail light after these various tests?
Yes, after all of the tests.
Did you assess the acceleration and quantify the forces that were involved?
Yes.
Did you assess the material and textile damage to the clothed ATD?
Yes.
Ultimately, did you conduct lab tests in an effort to answer some of these questions as well?
Yes.
And you've already mentioned this, but you utilized in your testing the exemplar vehicle to the fullest extent that you felt necessary?
Absolutely,
Were you
yes.
hampered or hindered in any way in terms of damaging the vehicle or utilizing the vehicle in any way that you wished?
No.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are tests A and B? What are those laboratory tests?
So these were the initial two tests that we did to get an idea of starting to test this hypothesis. As I mentioned, we weren't sure at 10 miles an hour what would happen to the taillight. We wanted to see what would happen at 17 miles an hour with the arm. So again, it was to evaluate from a starting point what happens in this interaction based upon how Dr. Welcher had his arm oriented in his PowerPoint and analysis.
Next slide, please. What is this?
So you're looking at a photograph of our lab setup. You can see on the left side of that is our Hybrid 3 anthropomorphic test device. To the right is a linear impactor, and this is something we already have in-house that we built years ago for our testing that we do for the National Hockey League when we're looking at, what's the accelerations on an impact to a goal.
That's great too that they got this in the testimony. He puts in the National Hockey League. That's something that people can relate to. They work to improve their equipment. I think they did some testing on helmets. I'm sorry. No, it wasn't helmets. It was their boards. They tested, they actually helped reconstruct their boards. So when hockey players were getting smashed into them or landed into them, that they weren't getting as hurt. And they were a part of that. So we're going to get into the testing now. Sorry, I'm not ignoring everybody. I'm just updating a few things here and listening to the testimony with all of you. But here we go. We'll go back to
only wearing a helmet, right? We use this same device for that type of testing to measure head acceleration. So we applied this same linear impactor to be able to project, if you will, or accelerate the taillight at a known speed into the ATD arm.
What are some of the instrumentation that you use in addition to the mechanical impactor? What's some of the instrumentation you use to track the data?
Certainly. So you can see, I'll get my, see around here. So at the top here, there's a blue camera here. There's another blue camera here. So these are our high-speed cameras. And you'll see there's a bunch of lights around those high speeds. That's just because the frame rate's so high. And again, it's only sampling a very, very short amount of time. So you have to have a lot of light when you do these high-speed tests. So we have the high-speed cameras running. We have an accelerometer mounted to the ATD arm here on the other side. So that's some of the instrumentation. There's also a couple other cameras that we're documenting this overall.
Can we move to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these photographs?
So this is looking at, and not to be confused, this wasn't the arm position when the impact occurred. This is just showing you the setup. So on the left is just kind of an overall shot. And then on the right here is a uniaxial accelerometer. So that's going to measure, we talked about that term earlier, right? The acceleration. So that's going to measure how quickly is this arm changing its speed, right? What's the acceleration of the arm as it's impacted?
Does that accelerometer put in motion some of the mathematical formulations that you talked about earlier?
Yes.
Let's move to the next slide, please. Tell me about these photographs.
So the importance of this is, more specifically looking at the right photograph here, might be a little bit hard to see, but we wanted to get the same exact sweatshirt or hoodie for the testing to evaluate if the taillight breaks, is there a mechanism for the fragments to penetrate and cause holes in the sweatshirt as were observed in Mr. John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Next slide. Were you successful in finding the exact replica sweatshirt?
Yes, and I will note, as I mentioned, I know it probably is hard to see, but the material blend on the sleeves are the exact same. They are 60% cotton and 40% polyester.
Great find on the sweatshirt too. I was really surprised. Like, wow, they actually found the hoodie sweatshirt. Obviously different color, but same make as the one John had on that night. It was pretty impressive that they could still find that almost 3 years later.
Important in your mind to maintain consistency with the data that you had received concerning John O'Keefe's clothing?
Certainly, I think we wanted to try to control as many variables as we could.
Let's move to the next slide, please. Test A. Describe Test A for us, please.
This is great.
So you're going to see a series of photographs and then videos, but Test A was mounting a preconditioned taillight on that linear impactor to accelerate it into the Hybrid 3 arm to, again, evaluate the damage to the taillight and the acceleration to the arm.
Let's move to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in these photographs?
So you're looking on the left, a photograph just before the impact test was conducted. On the right, you're looking at a thermal image that is depicting the temperature profile of the taillight.
Describe that thermal image.
Certainly. Your Honor, may I refer to my notes?
Yes.
Hey, Adam, if you're still in the chat, check your email. Everything should be good for Monday. Here we go.
So what I did is I analyzed the profile of the temperature down in this area. And when we look at that segment, that lower portion here, where contact was made, the average temperature in that area was about 34 degrees with a minimum of about 33 degrees.
How did you get that exemplar taillight down to around freezing?
So all of the taillights that we tested were preconditioned overnight in a freezer.
Why was that important?
Well, it's my understanding that at the time that this allegedly occurred, the ambient temperature was 31 degrees Fahrenheit. So as I mentioned earlier, certainly there's a correlation between how plastics perform in cold weather. So we wanted to take that variable into account in our testing to precondition them down to temperatures that were consistent with at the time of the alleged incident.
Yeah, it's really good, Mary. The only issue I had, and I thought that was going to hang them a little bit, is when they did the suspended arm, I kind of felt like it should have been on a mannequin, and I thought, or the test dummy, and I thought that Hank was going to hang him on him, and they did. He dug in a little bit, but learning again, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a scientist, I'm not sure how much that would actually make a difference. Which, listening to it today and being able to hear it a little bit more, I'll go back and review it. I don't think it would overall have a huge impact because it's the vehicle that you really would be worried about, because if you have a static arm, the vehicle, basic law, just like we heard here in the Newton's law, is that it's the vehicle that's making the impact. So it wouldn't have any real result on the arm, being in that position, static, whatever it may be, because that is just gonna, if anything, it would have ripped his arm off at 20. And I think he says that it would have ripped his arm off. All right, let's keep going here.
What are we looking at in this slide, on this photograph?
So this is a video. Do you want me to go ahead and play the video?
Tell us what we're going to see, and
point.
I'll ask the court's permission.
So you were looking at a camera that is mounted above the entire setup. If you look at the top portion of this video, you will see the taillight part of it's covered by the high-speed camera. But what will happen is the linear impactor will fire, and the taillight will be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour, striking the clothed ATD arm.
Potato cannon.
Let's go ahead and play.
Potato cannon. Pretty cool.
Next slide, please.
That would hurt, but it wouldn't kill you.
So this is also a video, but with the high-speed camera. So it's the high-speed camera that's looking top down at the arm. So you will see, when the video plays, you will see the taillight enter from the left and contact the arm. And I will note that this is essentially slow mode, so it's not happening in real time. So you'll see the taillight slowly moving, but it's actually in reality moving at 10 miles per hour.
Understood. Go ahead and play that.
It's pretty cool here. Look at that. It'd be like a little bit more than a punch from Mike Tyson.
Now that that's played, how did you mount the taillight to the accelerator, the linear accelerator?
Right, so we had to get a little bit creative there because you may have observed this when we had the physical assembly out earlier. The back of that, it's not some nice clean surface that we can just bolt on. So what we had to do is 3D print a bracket that we could bolt onto the linear impactor, and we used a polyurethane expanding foam to be able to marry those two together so that we could then bolt it onto the linear impactor to use it for this test.
Did you see any debris from that foam mounting mechanism?
Yes, there's a few flakes you can see of that polyurethane foam off the backside kind of going into being dispersed there.
Okay. With regard to this particular 10-mile-an-hour test, what did you note in terms of the damage to the tail?
And that was good for Jackson to get that in, because obviously see those little white splinters or foam that's floating around, and you want to make that clear to the jury that that wasn't taillight. And they're going to say, what was the result? And he said, nothing happened.
Light?
It was very minimal.
And what did you note in terms of any damage at all to the hoodie?
Nothing.
There was none.
We go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is looking at a side view. So same test, just looking at it from the side. And similar, you'll see the tail light come from the left and impact the arm.
If we can play this, please.
And I'll tell you, these physicists, they love this
What
shit.
did you note in terms
They love
of
this stuff.
deflection of the arm, the test arm?
Well, the arm essentially, and we'll see this in the data later, it reaches a common velocity with the tail light based upon the portion of the arm that was contacted, again, consistent with how Dr. Welcher has it oriented. It will become accelerated up to 10 miles an hour, roughly.
Over approximately what period of time is that arm accelerated up to 10 miles an hour along with the tail light?
We'll see it on the data plots. I think it's about 10 milliseconds or so.
How long, do you know how long an eye blink on average takes?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't. Probably pretty quick.
Somewhere around 250 milliseconds? Does that sound right?
Sustained.
Let's move to the next slide, please.
Well, they used very easy terms. I mean, they essentially, and I don't want to, take a shot at, I'm not saying this in any disparaging way. They dumbed it down. Like when you see those books, crash reconstruction for dummies. But when we got the crash reconstruction from Trooper Paul, it was just, he is a dummy. But this is science and data, and you can't deny this. But yeah, they made it very easy to follow. All right, let's go.
What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So these are extracted frames from the high-speed video that we just saw on the previous slide, basically showing just at contact, just after contact, and then post-contact, so you can see the kinematics of the arm and how the arm is moving.
Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. What is this photograph?
So this is photographs taken of the taillight after the 10-mile-an-hour test. I will note that there was a couple small fragments of the clear portion of the assembly, the outer lens that was missing from that turn signal area towards the left here. There's a couple fragments missing, and then there was some small fracturing here in that area.
How would you describe the damage to the taillight in the 10-mile-an-hour test?
If I may go to the next slide, I think it might.
Sure.
So this was the totality of that damage at 10 miles per hour. So I would describe it as minimal and superficial.
Okay. Next slide, please. What is this?
So this is the photograph that I just shown you compared to that of the subject taillight, so that you can have a side-by-side comparison of the test taillight compared to that of the subject.
Were you able to reach any opinions and conclusions about whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 10 miles an hour?
It's inconsistent, in my opinion.
Next slide, please. This is still test A, is that correct?
Correct.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to Mr. O'Keefe's clothing is consistent with being struck by the taillight at 10 miles per hour?
What I observed from the test is that there was no mechanism to create any of the holes that we observed on the subject sweatshirt.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
As well as the former opinion that you just gave us?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So this is a graph that shows the roughly, on the next graph, you're going to see a 24 millisecond window. So what I want to show you on this graph is what does that look like over a full second, so you can have an appreciation of just how quickly this is occurring. As you mentioned earlier, I think your comment about a blink of an eye, this is even shorter than that. We're looking at, as you'll see on the next graph, again, it spans over just a few milliseconds. So that yellow tick that you see in the middle there, what I've done is I've plotted that over a full second. So 1 second is equal to 1,000 milliseconds. So if we go 500 milliseconds to the right, 500 milliseconds to the left, this whole graph represents 1 second in time. This impact duration is occurring very quickly.
1 second, is that reflected from the beginning of the graph to the end of the graph? That's representative of 1 second, is that right?
Correct. So starting at this y-axis all the way to here is 1 second in time, with our impact duration happening over just a few milliseconds.
And this was at 10 miles an hour?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So we're looking at the acceleration or the change in speed over time, that parameter that we discussed earlier. So what you can see is that as the arm is impacted, we had the accelerometer mounted on the inside portion of the forearm, if you will. You see that it starts to accelerate, right? Because it's changing.
I'm just going to move up in the testimony. I want to get to more experiments. I love the data. I get it. I somewhat understand it, but I want to see the experiments. All right, let's go here. Here we go.
That issue, worn by John O'Keefe.
17-mile-an-hour impact.
I'll ask it a different way.
Actually, I want to watch this part right here. Let's talk about this part. Here we go.
Undertook after the lab tests.
So we conducted 2 tests with a suspended ATD arm that was impacted by an exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570. We then conducted a test where the arm was then attached to a test dummy. And then our final test was a full-on impact to a test dummy.
Can we go to slide 48, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
This is the exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570 that was utilized during this test program.
Was this the same vehicle that was utilized in all the tests, C, D, E, and F?
Correct, yes.
If we could go to slide 49, the next slide. What's depicted in this photograph?
Well, so there's a number of things here, so I'll try to point them all out. So
yeah, this is all from the brain. This guy definitely has a brain.
Obviously, we talked about just now the Lexus here, the exemplar vehicle. We have a forklift that was hoisted up that ultimately was suspending the arm. We have
Jennifer, thank you so much for the $25 PayPal. She says, Brian, thank you for bringing awareness and compassion for Karen and Enrique. Yes. Thank you so much for that. Listen, I know there hasn't been a lot of traction. Well, there actually has. There's been a lot of momentum in Enrique's case. And, I know a lot more. I know a lot more. I cannot talk about it yet. And I just keep telling people, hang in there. Hang in there. Trust me. Trust me on this one. Hang in there. Hang in there. That's all I can say for now. Just hang in there. I know it's very frustrating, but hang in there. All right, here we go.
I think I have an additional photograph that shows it close up. But the arm was suspended from the forklift at the correct height to interact with the taillight. We have our high-speed cameras set up under this umbrella. There's another one over here. Another thing you'll note is we brought out the chest freezer when we were installing these in the Lexus to, again, keep them at that steady state temperature for as long as possible.
And I'll pause this as well as really quick, before we get back to testimony. If you go to LTLmedianews.com, you can see it there on the bottom of the screen. That's my website. I'm telling you, go to the Enrique tab and read what I've been writing. There was a lot of Easter eggs in my articles. So if you want to hear about what's going on, there was a ton of Easter eggs in my articles. And that's all I can say for now. All right, let's go.
Possible.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is the approximate position that we plan to have contact occur in these tests. So as you can see, the forearm is in contact with the liftgate and the quarter panel taillight along with the elbow.
Why did you choose this configuration for the arm, the forearm, the hand, the elbow?
It was based upon my review of Dr. Welcher's work, and that he did through his static and dynamic test or paint test that this is how the arm was roughly oriented when the alleged contact occurred.
What were you trying to replicate in positioning the arm this direction, this way, as it relates to the SUV?
Well, I think as I stated earlier, it was to understand, okay, let's get beyond just simple geometry, aligning things. What happens to the arm, right? What are the accelerations? What's the damage, right? What we want to answer some of those other questions that Dr. Welcher didn't answer.
Does this...
So I'm going to strike the last part of that answer.
Of course he does.
Configuration align with your understanding of Dr. Welcher's alignment of the arm as it relates to the vehicle?
Okay. Sustained.
May we approach your arm?
Yes.
All right, let's speed up for time purposes. I want to see some experiments.
15 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in these two photographs?
So on the left is a photograph of the temperature. For this test, the average was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit for the taillight.
All right, yeah, that's what I want to
Is
see.
there a reason you believe physically was
To
purple and white line?
reference. This is a drone video
Here we
showing
go.
a top-down perspective of the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the forklift.
Okay. If we can watch this video, please.
Now think, this is the thing you have to think of. Yeah, it looks great. It's going back. This is on a straight parking lot. It is not straight at 34 Fairview. Okay. It's on like a 30-degree grade. I'm trying to explain this because I've been down there hundreds of times. It's on a 30-degree grade. It goes uphill. You had wet conditions that night. It's at nighttime and it curves just before you get to 34 Fairview where the lawn is. You would have went up on the curb. You can watch this video. Aiden Carney Turtle Boy did a construction of this, or recreated it in broad daylight on like a summer day, and he went up on the curb and he couldn't even get up to 30 miles an hour. So it's wild when you actually go there and see it. You're like, there's no fucking way that she did that could back up, because it curved. It would have been brilliant if they did this on a curved road. All right, let's watch the experiment here.
Do your next slides show? There you go. The suspended arm. What are we looking
There
at?
you go.
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift, looking down at the arm. So you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolf, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry, I was talking over that.
Sorry,
That's okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help. I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this
Adam says, I still can't believe how nobody is talking about the fire hydrant close to the flagpole, but speeding backwards drunk and missed the hydrant. Yeah. Okay. That's a great point too. That's a really good point. And then there's what else? There's another thing that's in their yard. They have that the electrical panel that's there too. That's just past the hydrant a little bit, maybe 3 feet in from that as well. There's like an electrical panel there. But that's a good point too.
this in
All
real
right,
time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
Thank you. What happened to the
I
arm
mean, that's moving.
in terms of its suspension?
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
Which would probably mean, and we saw this in BN Trouble's video when he did this, what happened to the arm? It basically ripped off. And that's what he's trying to say. He's not going to testify to ripping off from his body, but I sure as hell know who is. Rentschler's going to get up there and say his arm would have been ripped off from his body, or at least detached and hanging out of the socket. All right, here we go.
Is there a reason you believe physically that arm was ripped off from the suspension tethers?
Well, certainly there was enough force to break the tie lines to the forklift.
Was there a test value of those tie lines?
Fucking
I
scary.
think they were rated at 150 pounds.
What does that suggest in terms of the force that was exerted, just before we get to the other testing, the force that was exerted on the arms to tear off the tie lines?
Well, it indicates that the arm saw at least 150 pounds of force.
Okay. Next slide, please.
150 pounds of force. Wow.
What are we looking at in this video?
So this is going to be a slow motion video. You'll see the Lexus accelerate in reverse, making contact with the arm. And again, this is the 29 mile per hour impact test.
Okay.
It's a slow motion. Jeez, man. Look at that thing.
Next slide.
They
please.
love this stuff. They love
And what is
these
this?
experiments.
This is a video, a high-speed video, so slow motion of test D at 29 miles per hour into the ATD arm that is suspended. So you'll see the Lexus enter the frame from the right and impact the arm.
Okay.
Thank you, Britt. Look at that.
Was this strike more reflective of what you were attempting to replicate?
Yes, this was a more central impact to the arm. Yes.
Thank you.
And
Next
again,
slide, please.
that tail light
And what is this?
don't
So
look,
this is a high.
doesn't look anything like that tail light looked like in the Sally Port. That is the overall point in all of this. And I think people are mad. Oh, well, it showed the tail light shatter. It's of course it's going to shatter. You're going 20 miles an hour, 29 miles an hour, almost 30 miles an hour into a crash test dummy that is simulating a human arm. But the point in all of this is the contact that made on that arm and that outer lens. It was really more that arm being there was more centrally focused on that longer part. That's where the impact of that arm took. And that outer shell wasn't never exposed or damaged. And you're going to see it in some
Speed or
photos
slow motion
in a minute.
video depicting the test D at 29 miles per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay.
And you're going to see it right here. That's it. That right there. Let me go back. That is the case.
Per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay.
Right here. Watch. Where did all that shattering go? And I wish I could get up and point to it, but you can see it all right here. That long outer lens. Okay. That blew all that out. Remember on this side, and I don't know if you can see you can see my mouse. This side right here inside the Sally Port was all gone, completely gone. That's it. That's the case. Need I say more?
Next slide.
You're gonna see it
And what are we
again.
looking
Here
at
we go. Look at that.
So this is extracted frames from the high-speed video. So starting out left to right, this is roughly at first contact with the majority of the hand, the hand and majority of the forearm in contact with the liftgate taillight, with a portion of the elbow in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Can I stop you right there on that far left frame? Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the taillight?
Yes, more of a central impact.
I think this is probably the biggest moment in everything right here. This is the biggest moment. If the jury sees this and can understand it, I would be like, listen, there's no way. I would be like, let's look at that picture in the Sally Port and let's look at the experiment from ARCCA. They don't line up. It doesn't work. To me, I think this is the moment. This would be it for, I'd be like, hell no. That's it. I'd be like, hell no if I was a juror. Nope. Hell no.
Impact compared to that first test at 15. Yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car? Okay.
Sustained.
Is this consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welcher's report?
Yes. Sustained. Can I ask you differently?
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29 mile an hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay, next slide, please. What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the lift
That it doesn't look like anything like the taillight inside the Sally Port.
gate taillight,
I know.
a significant portion of that thick 5mm red outer lens is fractured and broken off. There's the underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is another photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight. As I indicated, there is portions of the red lens cover missing. The interior diffusers remained largely intact in this test.
Next slide.
Oh, look at that.
Was this
There it is.
side-by-side
There's the
picture?
case.
This
That's the case right there, folks. That's the only slide the jury needs to look at right there. That's the only slide the jury needs to look at. All right, we'll finish this. And then the last half hour, I want to go to Hank Brennan versus Dr. Wolf, and then we'll wrap up tonight. And I just want to make sure, just say that I appreciate everybody being in here tonight and hanging out on this late night Friday. I know it's late. Probably a lot of people are in bed. We've had a long day, probably watched a lot of shows today, but I wanted to get in here and talk a little bit about this. And of course, we're going to really deep dive into this on Monday night when I have 3 awesome panel guests. Of course, we're going to have Nan Gallagher, attorney Nan Gallagher. We're going to have retired Mass State Police Todd McGee. And then joining us for the first time is going to be Adam Tepper. He's also a lawyer as well, a local lawyer here in Massachusetts. And I can't wait to see what he has to say about all of this stuff too. So we'll do our typical Monday night wind up with a lot of rapid fire and Q&A. It's going to be a great time. And then tomorrow, on Sunday, we had to move the time. Ted Daniel from Boston 25 News is going to join the Sunday conversation on the Super Show, Sunday Super Show. We'll have Ted Daniel over there, and we're going to get into it and just see how the legacy media reports on this case and get Ted's thoughts on the Karen Reed case. So I'm excited about that. All right, let's play a little bit more here, and then we're going to go to some cross from Hank Brennan. Here we go.
This is showing the results of the 29 mile per hour impact test to the test vehicle compared to that of the subject taillight.
Given that orientation of test D, were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour?
It was inconsistent.
Oh,
What's the basis for that opinion, Dr. Wolf?
The results of this test.
yeah.
And was that testing conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 29 miles per hour? When I say the right rear taillight, I mean of the subject vehicle.
Sustained and supposed to that.
With regard to your opinion concerning whether the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour, do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Next slide, please.
All right, we're going to stop here. I'm going to go to Hank Brennan versus Dr. Wolf, and then we'll wrap up after that. All right, here we go.
So, jurors, we are going to stop today at 3:45.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We can't wait. Hang on.
Go- All right. So, okay, great. Thank you.
Here comes
Do we
Hank.
have the actual? Okay, great. Yep. So,
216.
thank you. All right, Mr. Brennan.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wolf.
Good afternoon.
When you testified in direct, you shared with the jury some of the work that ARCCA does. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you had mentioned a couple interesting things, that there had been some work with the Department of Defense.
Correct. Yes.
The work with the Department of Defense, was that during your time or before you got there?
That would have been prior to my employment. Yes.
So when you were telling them about working with the Department of Defense, that really had nothing to do with you. That was ARCCA before you began working there.
ARCCA as a whole, yes, the work that we do, yes.
Not you.
As I said, I wasn't involved specifically in that project, no.
And you mentioned that you did some stuff, or the company does some things for the NHL.
Yes.
You didn't tell us much more about what you do. There's other things that ARCCA does as far as clients, right?
Certainly.
Did you share with us that you work for lawyers and law firms?
Yes, we do.
And you do litigation, insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any reason why you highlighted the Department of Defense that you don't do and the NHL but didn't share the rest of the stuff with us?
That's just some of the prominent clients that we have.
I see. You provided us a CV, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's like a resume, tells us a little bit about your education experience. You get to highlight some of the things, your accomplishments.
Yes.
You shared with us you've been the director of accident reconstruction at this company, ARCCA, since 2017.
No, not since I started.
You started with ARCCA in 2017.
Correct, yes.
When did you become the director of accident reconstruction?
I think that would have been in January of 2024, so about a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago?
Yes,
And you received your certification from ACDAR.
yes.
Did you pass the test on both parts first time?
I don't recall if I think it was I had to retake, I think, the practical section in the afternoon.
Well, you would recall something like that, wouldn't you? Did you pass both parts on the first try?
Like I said, I think it was the second part I had to retake.
Well, this is a pretty important test, isn't it?
Not really.
It's your
Not
certification.
really.
It is, but much of the concepts that are covered in it are very elementary.
Well, not so elementary. You had a hard time with part of it, didn't you?
Well, with respect to the portion that I had to retake, it's a practical exam where you have to reconstruct an accident. You have to determine approach angles, departure angles, and it can be very sensitive to those inputs. And unfortunately, if you mess up one of your first angles and you carry out that calculation, then the whole problem is graded wrong, even if you did all the math correct.
So we understand there's a multiple choice question part. That's the easier part, correct?
I don't know if it's easier, but there is a multiple choice part.
There's a more practical part where you actually have to go out in the field and do assessments, kind of like the things that you did today.
You don't go out into the field, no.
And, when did you first take that second part that you did the test?
I don't recall.
You don't remember when you took the test?
No, I don't.
Suffice to say, you took it again,
Correct.
and ultimately you passed both sections of that test?
Yes.
In your CV, you list your schooling, and you list your degrees, don't you?
Yes.
I like this part.
You mentioned some of the things that you
I don't mention
focused on in
lectures.
your academic experience, don't you?
Yes.
And you have publications.
Correct.
Recently, you did a publication regarding vehicle control history on Toyotas.
Correct.
Vehicle control history is data that is stored in a vehicle,
Yes.
and Toyota owns Lexus, correct?
Correct.
So you have familiarity with vehicle control history. In fact, you have a publication on it.
Yes.
In your entire resume, you only mention pedestrian collisions, or that you're involved in pedestrian-type events 3 times. Is there anything specific in your resume or your publications that show a published accomplishment, for example, in pedestrian collisions? Do you have any publications that have been peer-reviewed or published in that area?
No, I don't have any publications in pedestrians.
You write or you note areas of specialty, and you list a bunch: accident reconstruction, human factors, EDR, commercial vehicle, HVEDR, pedestrian bicycle accidents, nighttime visibility, and a number of others, correct?
Correct.
Is there anywhere in your resume that notes particular classes that you've attended and completed regarding pedestrian collisions?
No, I haven't taken any classes in that.
You haven't taken any classes on pedestrian collisions?
No.
Have you ever taught regarding pedestrian collisions?
No.
Have you ever been a speaker in a presentation about pedestrian collisions?
Yes.
Okay. Is that listed in your resume?
I don't list lectures or presentations, no.
That's good.
You were asked questions about your involvement in this case. Yes?
Yes.
And you had shared with us that you...
And that's a dickhead move right there. When he's sipping water, did you notice that? When he's sipping water, he was like, yes. He wanted him to answer really quick. That's a dickhead move. Watch.
You were asked questions about your involvement in this case. Yes?
Yes.
And you had shared with us that you, at the beginning, were working for a separate party or a third party, you said?
Yes, another agency.
Another. And at some
FBI.
point, you came into court and testified last year.
Yes.
And during the time before you came in and testified, you weren't wholly independent of the defense, were you?
Oh, gosh.
Well, certainly before all of our testing, at the point at which we did all of our testing, report, and analysis, as I mentioned on direct, I didn't know the Commonwealth or the defense in this case.
My question, more precisely, before you testified, before you came into court and gave your testimony, you weren't totally independent from the defense, were you?
No, I mean, I had to communicate with them to be able to determine when to appear for testimony.
So you were communicating with them, yes?
Yes.
And in fact, some of the time that you spent, ARCCA actually billed the defense for, and they paid that bill, didn't they?
Eventually after the trial, yes.
During that time, you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
Oh
Do you
boy.
think that you're under a sequestration order today?
Yes.
Did you talk to anybody about any of the prior testimony in this case before today?
No.
How'd you get here today?
How did I get here today? I took a car ride over from the hotel.
Who drove you?
It was a driver. I don't know his name.
Who set up the car?
It would have been someone on the defense team.
Was it like a window, like a limo?
It was an SUV.
Was there anybody from the defense with you on the ride over?
There were 3 young ladies in the back seat. I think they might have been interns, and Mr. Woke.
And who?
Mr. Wolk, I think it's pronounced. Am I saying it wrong?
That's really
Have you
funny.
discussed anything about this case before your testimony today as far as the trial?
Before today?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you discussed anybody's testimony in this case?
Nobody's testimony, no.
That was different last year, though, because before you testified last year, you did have discussions about testimony, didn't you?
Not with the Commonwealth or the defense, no.
But I'm asking, though, you did have discussions about testimony before you testified last year, right?
Correct, yes.
And you know what a sequestration order is, don't you?
Yes.
It's the second time you've asked me.
After you testified last year, the court ordered you to provide all of your text messages, all your communications with the defense, didn't they?
Yes, earlier this year.
And when you were ordered to provide all of the actual verbatim communications with the defense, did you provide those communications?
Yes, all of the records that I had at the time I provided.
Well, not the records. You know what I'm getting at. Did you provide the communications?
I provided everything I had in my possession, sir.
A text message isn't just a time and date. It's actually
God.
substance when you text somebody, isn't there?
Correct.
And when you texted, how many texts do you think you had with the defense?
From what I recall, I think it was around 50 texts that I sent.
It wasn't 100, I think it was 50.
Ugh.
Well, I think it was around 100 total in terms of back and forth, but it was, I think, 50 that I sent.
And during those texts, communications, conversations, correct?
About logistics, yes.
Did you provide the content of those text messages when you were ordered to by the court?
Well, those text messages spanned from, I guess it would have been April or so of 2024 through May to June of 2024. Ultimately, I think I received the court's order in May of this year, April of this year. So it was a year after the fact, and I had already deleted the text at that point.
How many of those text messages did you delete?
I just swiped the conversation, so it would have been the whole conversation.
Not how you did it. How many of those 100 or so text messages did you delete, sir?
It would have been the whole text chain. I didn't individually delete them. It just, when you swipe, it just deletes the text chain.
After you deleted them, did you go into the recently deleted and then delete them so they were unavailable?
I don't recall doing that.
Well, you were asked to search your records of the text messages. Did you do a thorough search to see if you still had them or whether you had destroyed them all?
I checked my phone, and I also checked with my phone carrier.
So do you know if they were still on
God.
the recently deleted part of your phone, or did you go and take that extra step and totally destroy them?
From what I recall, I did not find any of the text messages, no.
Is there any reason why you deleted all of your text communications with the defense?
Well, it's something that I routinely do. I work with attorneys and clients all the time, whether it's appearing for trial or inspections, and I don't have a habit of keeping a text chain that talks about logistics and things. It's just I routinely delete them after that communication is over with, and certainly after the prior proceeding, once it had concluded, there was no reason for me to preserve those.
Okay. And so, at some point, you switched from text messages to another form of communication, didn't you?
Yes, earlier this year.
Tell us a little bit about this new form of communication, not text messages.
Oh, and it's so
So,
groundbreaking.
Mr. J-
It's Signal app. Everybody uses Signal, dude. Everybody uses Signal. It's not a big deal, bro. Check it out. It's probably billions of people that use the Signal app.
Jackson had indicated that he and his defense team utilized an application known as Signal for their communications amongst their defense team. Ultimately asked if I would also use that application to communicate, which I agreed to.
Is Signal an
Because there's very sensitive information that you're talking about. So you don't want to get that into the hands of anybody else.
encrypted app?
It's a secure encrypted app, yes.
It doesn't leave any records, right?
I don't believe so, no.
Well, you're using it. Do you have any records from your Signal use?
Oh,
I'm going to allow that.
Do you have any records from your Signal use?
I do not, no.
So you know full well that Signal's an encrypted app leaves no record.
I don't know.
There may be a setting that you can change. I just know that the way that it was set up, there
You
was no
change
record.
it?
Who set yours up to have no record?
Oh, God.
I don't know. I think it was default.
Have you ever checked your Signal app to see if you have any record of your communications pursuant to that court order?
Well, I don't have the application anymore, but at the time I did check the application.
Out of all these clients that you've had, how many times or how many clients would you use Signal with?
This was the first time.
Have you used it since with other clients?
Not yet, no.
Before you testified last time, at the last proceeding, or should I say when you testified at the last proceeding, kind of like today, you attempted to portray yourself as totally independent, didn't you?
Sustaining that.
When you testified at the prior proceeding, did you attempt to portray yourself as totally independent?
Yes.
The truth is, before you testified,
Here we go.
you were communicating with the defense and attempting the best you could to assist their cause, weren't you?
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
So before you testified, you wrote out questions that you thought could help, that you should be asked when you testified, correct?
So something I routinely do before testifying is prepare an outline of topics and questions that would best help be able to get out my opinions and analysis I undertook, ultimately so that you all have an understanding of what I did.
I like the fact that he says, I would have done this for the Commonwealth as well. And this is, I like in that the last time, it wasn't during the testimony, I think it was the voir dire. He said, well, you didn't engage us. You didn't want to engage us. Because again, this is the case. This is the case.
So I'm asking you a question. You gave the explanation, but you're skipping over the answer to my question. So I'll ask you again. Before you testified, did you write out a list of questions that you wanted to be asked?
Yes.
And when you listed out the questions, you also listed out the answers, didn't you?
A general response. It wouldn't be verbatim to that.
You didn't say verbatim, because you listed out the answers to each and every one of the questions that you had prepared.
Yes.
So for every question, there's an answer that you provided so that you could follow a script, so to speak, yes?
Oh, gosh.
I wouldn't characterize it as a script.
One of the questions asks, so not being able to inspect vehicles is something that's not uncommon in your line of work? And your answer, absolutely not.
Microdots checking in. By the way, buy yourself some Microdots merch and support that. We always got the Microdots mug on tap. But Microdots check says the jury must hate Hank after today. If I was on the other side, I'd be furious at him for it. Yeah, lots of low blow tactics here today. Lots of low blow tactics. Yeah, you gotta buy the Microdots merch. And the thing that I like about this, and I did say this, Richie, I said this last night on my show. I love that it's a tall mug because I can hold a lot of water in it during the show. And I'm always sipping on this thing. Everybody will tell you. And I got the I do have the wild animals photo hung up here in the studio in the green room. I got it up over there. So yeah, no pressure. I'm telling you, he's got some of the best merch in any of the free Karen Reed bubble. I love it. I gotta get some t-shirts. But all right, here we go.
Remember writing that out?
Yes.
And you put a footnote.
Yeah, let's fucking do it. Let's fucking do it. You're coming in here. Let's do it. Come hang out. Come hang out. We'll have a conversation. Yeah, anytime. Hit me up. If you want to do it on like a Sunday, Sunday's perfect. We can do it on a Sunday. Look at that. Microdots wanting to reach out and come hang out in the LTL studio. I love it. Yeah, just hit me up and we'll figure something out. Sunday's probably the best day. You want to do it on a Sunday. All right, let's play a little bit more and then we're going to wrap this one up. I'm tired. I worked all day. And we'll hear Spanky a little bit more here. Here we go.
And you said, not sure if you want to put this somewhere in the direct examination. I have a feeling they are going to argue I didn't personally inspect the vehicles. I had enough information from the material I reviewed, so it wasn't necessary. Need to show the jury it doesn't matter in this case. Did you write that?
Yes.
When you're talking about they, I have a feeling they are going to argue I didn't personally inspect the vehicle. Who's they?
That'd be the Commonwealth.
So when you were writing out these questions as is your routine with the answers, is this the mark of independence to you?
Well, I think, again, whether the Commonwealth asked me that question or the defense asked me that question, my response would be the same. It wouldn't change depending on who called me to testify. There are a number of cases, by the time I get involved, the evidence is gone from the roadway, the vehicle is gone. So it's certainly not necessary to inspect the vehicle. And I wanted the jury to have an understanding that because I didn't physically inspect the vehicle, it didn't affect my analysis in the case.
So you think that showed independence?
Yes.
I agree, Scott.
Then you also had another question. Would it be fair to say that because you do a lot of nighttime visibility work, the cases frequently involve pedestrians? Remember that?
Yes.
And you said, yes, unfortunately, there is a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian fatalities. Is that true?
Correct, yes.
And do they happen more often in the day or at night?
More often at night, yes.
Statistically speaking, by the way, this case involves nighttime, doesn't it?
Correct.
Statistically speaking, most of pedestrian fatalities occur during the evening and night hours. So my specialty in the area of lighting and human factors results in a lot of my cases.
Good point.
Did you write that?
Yes.
In fact, you testified, you shared that with the jury, didn't you?
Correct. I've testified to that twice last year as well as this year.
And in the notes that you wrote, when you shared it last year and this year, was it an important point to the jury?
I think so, because it helped gave them an understanding, I think, of my background in lighting and human factors. And as I mentioned earlier today, there's a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian impacts, right? So my specialty in lighting and human factors results in me seeing many, many different types of pedestrian impacts.
So if it was important, why did you include a note? If you don't want me to say this, that's fine. Why did you include a note to the defense that if they didn't want you to say something that you thought was important, you would leave it out?
Well, I think because I didn't want to confuse the jury about a statistic that just because we have inclement weather and dark lighting conditions, it doesn't automatically equal a pedestrian impact, right? We have to look at the evidence and the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to determine whether or not a collision occurred, not the visibility.
So you weren't trying to mislead the jury, you were trying to help them because they wouldn't understand something that you were trying to explain? Is that the way you're phrasing this?
I think at the end of the day it was to help them understand my background, how it relates to seeing a lot of pedestrian impacts.
Something was important. It helps the jury get to the truth. Why would you offer to leave it out?
Well, I didn't leave it out.
You would have requested. Why did you invite, why did you invite somebody else?
There we go. This is now where the frustration in Hank is going to start, because he's not getting what he wants. And Wolf's like a wall. He's not going to budge. And this whole like, excuse me, that's a dickhead move. That's to try to get Wolf worked up. And he's got, the patience of a cow. I mean, he's not going to budge. Let's go back and hear the excuse me, I'm talking, excuse me. All right, here we go. This is where it's all going to start unfolding.
Is that the way you're phrasing this?
I think at the end of the day it was to help them understand my background, how it relates to seeing a lot of pedestrian impacts.
Something was important. It helps the jury get to the truth. Why would you offer to leave it out?
Well, I didn't leave it out.
No, but you offered to. You would have requested. Why did you invite, why did you invite somebody else to interject in your independence and guide you to leave something out? Why would you even provide that invitation to them?
Again, it's because I didn't want them to get hung up on a statistic that just because we have more pedestrian impacts at night and in bad weather, that this alleged incident happened at night under bad weather, to give it more weight, to weight the evidence more because of that statistic.
You done?
Yes.
Oh, Hank, do you really think this is playing well in front of the jury? You're being a dick. You're being an obnoxious dick. I mean, this is not good. This is not good lawyering. Are you done? Are you done? Are you done? That's a dickhead move. That's ultimately going to turn off a lot of people in that room.
Happened at night under bad weather, to give it more weight, to weight the evidence more because of that statistic.
You done?
Yes.
If you make a mistake in court under oath, would you
He's
take
almost
the
laughing
affirmative
at him.
step on your own and correct that mistake?
I'll allow it.
I would do my best to do that, yes.
Well, when you say do your best, would you do that if you became aware of it?
I'm going to allow it.
Yes.
Before you testified in a proceeding last
Now he's going to start the tactic of attacking his wife. Another low blow.
year, there was a hearing that you testified in front of Her Honor and other people that were here, correct?
Correct.
I wasn't here.
No.
You were.
Yes.
And you testified about your experience, didn't you?
Correct,
When you were
yes.
sharing your experience with the court, it was important for the court to have an accurate understanding of what your experience was because it was being evaluated in that hearing, wasn't it?
Correct.
When you testified to the court, you testified that you had been qualified as an expert to testify over 20 times, didn't you?
I don't have the transcript. I believe I said approximately 20 times.
The reality is you hadn't. You've only testified and been qualified 11 times at that point.
Correct. I misunderstood the question. I thought it also encompassed deposition, so I added those two and approximated at 20.
And at some point when you realized you had made a mistake in your testimony to the court, you had a chance to come back when you testified last year and fix it and clarify the record, didn't you?
Correct, which is why I provided a comment with the specific breakdown for clarification.
And when you came back and testified under oath the second time, on the record under oath, did you clarify and fix the mistaken testimony that you had provided to David Oden?
I don't recall being asked a question. No.
No, it wasn't whether you're being asked. The question is, did you take the affirmative step to fix the misstatements under oath that you made?
Objection.
I don't know.
Bring your approach.
Sure.
All right, we're going to speed up.
18 testimonies total. Not sure if you want to clear it up or just leave it. Was it
Correct.
yours?
Yes, sir.
Did you just leave it?
I'm not responsible for asking the question, sir.
That's great. Oh, I love that.
Do you ever heard the terms confirmation bias?
Oh, here we
Yes.
go.
Do you know what confirmation bias is generally?
Generally, yes.
Do you think that you suffer from any confirmation bias
my
in this
God.
case?
No.
Do you have any close family that supports one
Here you
side
go.
over the other? Not the facts of the
Ex-wife.
data, but one side over the other.
Close family?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Wife?
My wife?
Yes.
I don't really know what her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
If that guy approached me right now, I would slap the shnikey out of him. And that was just about what Dr. Wolf looked like he wanted to do. Like, he's like, you serious? Like, you're going to talk about my wife? Because he's digging. He's trying to get Wolf into a hole. It's not working. So he's going to go to low blow tactics. Let's go back.
You know what confirmation bias is generally?
Generally, yes.
Do you think that you suffer from any
Right.
confirmation bias in this case?
No.
Do you have any close family that supports one side over the other? Not the facts of the data, but one side over the other.
Close family?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Wife?
My wife?
Yes.
I don't really know what her thoughts are on the case.
May I approach?
Yes.
He had nothing here. This is a Zippo nothing.
Have you looked at that document and seen that before?
No, I have not.
Never seen it.
No.
Take it back.
It was a Zippo. That was a bullshit tactic that didn't work because he's holding a document in his hand. He probably thought, like, I'm going to trick him like it's some social media post or somewhere that his wife posted. So he's holding his hand and he said, your wife? And he was trying to see if he was going to budge and say something about favoritism to the defense, that, oh, his wife, something like that. So it was a made up tactic. And that document probably was just a bullshit document that he had to show because he had in his hand. All right, here we go.
You're unaware of anything that may influence you to lean one way or another?
Correct.
Your wife.
When you first took a look at some of the facts in this case, you had some information. Since then, you've received a lot more, haven't you?
Correct, yes.
Part of your testimony today to this jury was to provide opinions that you do not think that the holes in Mr. O'Keefe's clothes are consistent with some type of collision. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
In coming to that opinion, you relied on some of your testing that we saw in those videos, didn't you?
Yes.
And that testing involves a hybrid 3-arm, doesn't it?
Correct, yes.
A hybrid 3-arm is an arm from a crash dummy.
Yes.
That's not the technical name, but that's what it's often referred to.
Yes.
And you and Dr. Retrial have been working together on this case, haven't you?
Robert, I'm going to address this right now. So Robert is saying, please don't put out misinformation about closing arguments will be on Tuesday if they arrest. Brennan still has rebuttal witnesses, and it's going to take a couple of days. Listen, we're only speculating here. I'm not rubber stamping anything. This is what we do on these shows, Robert. Have you ever watched a live stream of people having a conversation? We opine, we talk about things, we speculate. It's called formulating opinions. Okay? For crow's sake, I have a lawyer in the chat room tonight giving his opinion. We're going to give opinions on Monday when you watch my show. I'm going to give opinions on Sunday when I have 10 Daniel on. That's what we do here. So no, I'm not putting out misinformation and rubber stamping anything. This is having a conversation at midnight on a Friday. That's what we're doing here, Robert. Do you know what that is? Do you know what do you know what YouTube live streaming is? It's called question and answer and interacting with your audience. Holy smokes. I did not say there was any definitive proof that this is happening. We're speculating. I was giving my opinion. Holy shnikes. It is late. You need to go back to bed. You need to go back to bed. All right, we're going to do a couple more minutes here, and then I'm going to wrap up and get out because I'm tired.
Yes.
Discussed ideas and shared thoughts.
Yes.
In fact, you've worked so intimately together, you know some of the things he's going to testify if he comes to testify, you've said many times today, right?
Yes.
And so some of the data that you shared and some of the opinions overlap with each other, wouldn't you say?
Certainly, he's going to rely on a lot of that test data, yes.
There's always got to be one.
When you were forming your opinion about holes in clothes and potential abrasions to somebody's skin, all of those tests, all of those that you did, were using a crash test dummy arm.
Sure they were talking to him. It's okay, though. But if it was on court TV, he would have been like, and I'm sure they talked about it all fucking day on court TV today. So when do you think the defense is going to rest? Do you think they're going to call any more witnesses? Who do you think they're going to call? Maybe it will end on Monday. Maybe it will end on Tuesday. Maybe they're closing arguments on Wednesday. I'm sure that was all over the place today. I saw it all over X. I saw it on Facebook. I'm sure court TV talked about it. But if it was court TV, yeah, we go with them. Not the guy here in Massachusetts. Not that guy. Not the little guy. Oh, my God. It is late. All right, let's go.
Yes.
In your report, you cite, or Dr. Rentschler cites, 3 different sources regarding testing clothing and skin, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, haven't you read his report?
I've skimmed it, but I don't know what the basis are for his opinions.
Did you see footnotes 24, 25, 26, 24 being skin tissue credibility and its relation to lacerations, severity, indices? Did you read that?
Let's see if there's a foundation.
No.
All right. It's midnight. I'm tired. I'm going to end this one. Oh, gosh. I've had enough. I've had enough tonight. I've had enough tonight. Oh, that was a good one. Anyway, Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have Ted Daniel over here. We had to bump up the time. His son has a baseball tournament and actually made it a little bit further, made it further into the playoffs. So we had to bump up the time. So Ted will be over here with me on Sunday. And I'm going to drop the link for everybody. I'm really stoked about this interview. I really am. I worked hard to get it. Had to jump through a bunch of hoops to get it, but we made it happen. And I'm going to drop the link here in the chat. Set your reminders. All right, do that for me. Set your reminders. 4 p.m. on Sunday. You can come hang out with us. Yeah, Kevin. It's Kevin from South Boston. Yeah, it was Kevin from South Boston. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this one up. I'm tired. Adam's going to join us on the live show on Monday. I can't wait for that 4-panel party on the Monday Night Wind-Up. And we are going to talk a lot about ARCCA. We're going to get back into this. My stomach is rumbling. I'm hungry. But that's it. It's a late night on Friday. I'm going to take, obviously, tomorrow off, gear up for Sunday and Monday. And we get a lot of content. And then Jess will be back with me on Wednesday. So it's going to be good stuff. But thank you for hanging out with me on this Friday night. I am blasted tired right now. I'm going to drive home. I'm going to get into my probably warm bed because it's warm in my apartment. I haven't been there all day. Maybe we need to turn the AC on. I don't know. But anyway, thank you all so much for hanging out on this edition of Friday Night Heat. I'll see you back on Sunday with Boston 25 reporter Ted Daniel. I'm really looking forward to that one. I hope you can join us. And if you can't join us live, make sure to watch the replay. All right, everybody. Talk to you soon. Have a good night. Bye-bye.